Can I be heard?
Yes.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. Somebody asked, why we don't have standing room only here tonight. I think next time I'll just change my name to something like Noam Chomsky, or maybe I should be giving talks on the moral defense of socialism, and then switch it up, switch it maybe. Because that would pack a room, and I think that says a lot about interest in capitalism broadly, and in the moral defense of capitalism in particular. And I think in particular today. So I'm here today to defend capitalism. And I don't think there's been a more important time, at least in the last 30 years, to defend capitalism. It is my belief that we are entering an unprecedented period where capitalism, where the free market, where businessmen and businesses are going to be under attack, are going to be regulated, are going to be taxed, are going to be controlled. Where freedom in America, particularly economic freedom, is going to be under assault in an unprecedented way, at least unprecedented over the last 30 years. In a sense, we've been fairly lucky over the last, I'd say, from about 1980 to 2000. The American people during that period believed that, to some extent at least, markets work. That capitalism, or at least what people call capitalism today, the diluted form of capitalism that we experience today, the regulated form of capitalism that we experience today, works. Entering recessions during the 1980s and 1990s, the general perception was the solution to those recessions was cutting taxes, less government, what's called deregulations or re-regulation. The idea of reducing controls over business. The general attitude of the American people seemed to be, markets function pretty well. We need controls, we need regulations, but in time of economic crisis, the solution is not more government, not more taxes, not more control, but less. And there are reasons why I think that happened between 1980 and 2000, and I'd be happy to answer questions about that. What's interesting about the recession that we are probably in right now is that all the commentators across the entire political spectrum are advocating more government as the solution to the crisis that we face today. Nobody is questioning the thesis right now that the recession we're in today was caused by so-called free markets, was caused by capitalism, was caused by, as John McCain said today, greedy Wall Street financiers. That is unquestioned. And the solution across the entire political spectrum, with almost no exceptions, is government intervention to bail out homeowners, government intervention to further regulate financial institutions, government regulations to control CEO pay. There was big stories this week in the Wall Street Journal about all the candidates being really concerned about the issues of CEO pay. Government regulations to control our carbon footprint. So it's coming from almost every direction. It used to be that there was a certain portion of the Democratic Party that stood up for free trade, for example. Bill Clinton was, for relatively free trade. Not complete free trade, as I'd like to see it, but relatively pro-free trade. Hillary Clinton just fired her chief strategist because he happened to be in Colombia talking about the possibility of maybe some looser, less restrictive trade with Colombia. So even that centrist, democratic, pro-free trade has disappeared, and of course we witnessed on the Republican side a significant populist movement against free trade and against free markets during this election cycle, to the point where somebody like Mike Huckabee, a socialist running in the Republican ticket, won 33% of the votes in a state like Texas, which is a pretty large state. So I think, and again, nobody in Congress, we're seeing bipartisanship around many of these issues. They're coming up with a bipartisan bill to bail out, so-called bail out the homeowners. and to further regulate the mortgage industry. Paulson proposed massive new regulations of financial markets. So in my view, it matters not who gets elected president this year. It matters not who controls the House and the Senate, although I think it's pretty safe to say Democrats will control both House and Senate. We are going to get more control, more regulation, less economic freedom in America after November. Now, why? And I think there are two problems, one more fundamental than the other. First is the fact that this crisis, this recession that we're entering, is blamed on markets. So the first is that there seems to be a complete misconception of what capitalism is, how it functions, and its value from a purely economic perspective. Much more fundamentally than that, and I think the reason why we don't see the economic value of capitalism is the fact that we believe, in our culture, as a culture, we believe that capitalism is inherently an immoral system. And that taints our ability to observe the empirical data which suggests capitalism is a successful economic system. So let's briefly look at the recession right now. And you know, is this a recession brought about? Is this a housing crisis brought about from the free market, from capitalism? And then we'll look a little bit more broadly at the benefits, the economic benefits of capitalism, and then we'll discuss some of the ethical, moral issues as they relate to capitalism. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm going to prove to you that the current economic problems that we have are not caused by markets. I'm going to give you some hints, some suggestions. Go do your homework. There's not enough time here to go through the whole litany of the economic proof. But let me suggest to you that we don't live in a capitalist economy.